Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Eye of the Storm. Before, actually, wait, sorry. I nearly forgot to introduce my boys. Hey, boys, say hello to the people.
How you doing, guys?
Guys, if you guys don't know, this is my boy Hervé, my boy Daniel. Daniel, you good? You say hello to the people.
All good. Hi.
Oh, guys. Well,
Daniel,
oh yeah, before
Daniel's
we
all
even
busy.
get, yeah, Daniel's just Zen. He's literally just Zen. He's the German Zen. But yeah, before we even get into the main discussion, what's the best recent thing that you guys seen?
Um, I can go first. So I watched The Boy and the Heron. Now, this probably, and I'm putting this on the best thing I've watched recently, just because it's one of the few things I actually watched recently. It was an okay movie. It was okay. I feel like, just a quick premise on the movie. It's kind of like, it's an anime, first and foremost. It's a Ghibli movie. If people know that, I wasn't too familiar going into it. Personally, I probably should have done a little bit of research before actually watching the movie. But it's just about a boy that's sort of, lost his mum, and he's just kind of going through the process of dealing with that loss whilst coming to terms with sort of his father and his father's new relationship with this new woman who's sort of also pregnant as well. And for the most part, it's an interesting story. It's got some like interesting concepts behind it, but I feel like there was quite a few sort of leaps taken in the movie and a lot of like things that were left to interpretation and a lot of things that weren't explained as well as it could have been. But overall, like the animation was beautiful, sort of that kind of like the voice cast and stuff like that, which is the main reason I went to watch it, because it's got a very strong voice cast in terms of, you got Robert Pattinson, Mark Hamill, Florence Pugh, Christian Bale in there. So voice acting and all that is really good. But I feel like, especially sort of a movie that's come from sort of a different part of the world where I'm not sort of too familiar with the storytelling, it was a little bit of it was an okay movie. I'll say it was an okay movie, and again, I probably should have done a little bit more research before going to view it. So I would recommend going and see it, but probably just try to understand the storytelling method that's being sort of used in the movie before going to see it yourself.
I heard some very mixed things about that one, mostly because of the storytelling, where if you're not used to that particular style, it can be borderline incoherent.
Yeah.
Like it really apparently asks you to do quite a bit of work to get into even understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. I had to do a lot of like reading and watch a few YouTube videos afterwards, just to for an explanation on certain parts of the movie and to understand sort of what some things were about. Yeah. So again, that's why I recommend it. But again, I say do your homework before going to watch the movie.
Cool. Daniel, what about you?
This week I watched Freaks, which is a 2018 science fiction thriller movie. This one is a really hard one to talk about without spoiling anything, and that means a lot coming from me because I think spoilers are completely overrated and have gotten way out of hand. But this is one where the entire movie is a mystery, and it slowly zooms out and gives you more and more information until it suddenly makes sense. And then if you go back and watch it again, every weird thing, every little detail made sense as much as it could, and it all adds up to one big puzzle. So the movie basically starts with a father and his young 7-year-old daughter, and they're sitting in this completely rundown house. Windows are boarded up. There's piles of cash on the table. There's guns. It's weird. And the father is coaching his daughter on how to behave. So never look outside. Never talk to anybody. If anybody does talk to you, hear the lies you're supposed to tell. And it's all just weird. And it goes from there. And then it slowly adds one piece after another until it all makes sense. And it was a joy to watch. And I'd never heard of it before. It just randomly appeared on Netflix this week. And I just watched it because it seemed kind of interesting. And I had two hours to kill. And it was one of the most enjoyable movies I've watched in a while, because it's a lot of the time mystery-based movies don't really make sense, and they just start filming, and eventually it ends, but there's no guarantee that there is an answer or that it makes any kind of sense. But this is a puzzle that was designed from the start. or it's the exact opposite of a mystery box, and I really enjoyed it on that basis.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, for me, this is old, but I watched Omniscient, and I just finished the last episode on Sunday. This came out 2020, and I believe, I don't know if this article was false, but I believe the season 2 is coming out this week. So if that is true, I am excited about that. But for those who don't know what Omniscient is pretty much a Brazilian series, and the biblical term of Omniscient, I believe, is all-seeing, all-knowing, because obviously God is all-seeing, all-knowing. And yeah, so that pretty much revolves around this series where the whole city, well, not the whole city, but in Brazil. So there's one part of Brazil that is literally under supervision 24/7, and there's like this flying fly that follows them everywhere they go. So literally, crime is literally your crime. So you can't hide. You can't hide the truth. You can't hide your crimes. It will be captured. And pretty much the series revolves around the brother and sister, and their dad was killed, but his crime wasn't captured, which is pretty much impossible in that city. So they try and pretty much figure out the mystery, who killed their dad and why wasn't it captured. And yeah, they go through a bunch of wahala and madness after that. Yeah, it's a really good series. I am actually looking forward to season 2. The reason how I came up on this series is because, like I said, big dystopian fan, and 3%, one of my favorite series of all time. Searched on Google, it's 3%, similar series. Omniscient came up, and funny enough, I found Omniscient like 2 years ago, but I just I just wasn't feeling it. Like the premise of it, I wasn't really feeling it. But then 2 years later again, so now in 2024, I ended up watching. I'm like, okay, this is actually really neat. It's really good. I actually really like there's a lot of allegories in it, just metaphors. It was very nice. Even when they entered a zone, so there's like 2 zones. One part of Brazil, which is all under supervision, and the other part of Brazil where there's no like flying cameras around. So it's literally like society now, like literally just no 24/7 supervision. When people would go from that zone to the zone with no supervision, the way that they'd be holding their bags and just looking around, I was thinking, God damn, are they in London? Like, what's going on? So that's kind of cool the way that they incorporate that. But yeah, it's a good one. Even the way that it ends, I'm kind of excited to find out how the story's gonna finish. Pretty much, it's a good watch. You guys should go and watch. But,
and it's about that murder being investigated, or
the murder was. Sorry, I'm not trying to spoil, but the murder was investigated, and they came to the conclusion that there was no wrongdoing. Now, obviously, the dad. Okay, quick spoiler: the dad was shot in the back. So it's like this guy was shot in the back. This wasn't suicide. So yeah, that's when the brother and sister are like, okay, now we need to figure out what's going on and why are the people behind this trying to cover it up. And funny enough, the people behind it, the sister works for that company, so there's a lot of in-house investigation going on there.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, main discussion time.
Primbon.
But before we even get into the main discussion, the main event, does anyone? By the way, you don't have to. We can just get straight into it. Does anyone want to give a quick synopsis to the fans? Not fans, sorry, to the subscribers. Sorry, I'm getting a bit too big-headed because we got 7 subscribers. Yes. Oh yeah. Should we just go straight into it, or does someone give a quick synopsis?
This is one that's not as well known, so maybe it's a good idea to just quickly recap what it's about.
All right, cool. Well, who's good at giving synopsis by now? Do you want to take that responsibility for today?
Daniel?
I can give it a shot. So this is an Indonesian horror movie. It is about a family who lives in Java. The idea is that the mother's birthday is coming up, and the daughter wants to go on a hike into the forest, and which she's not supposed to do, but she promises she'll be back by the time her mother's birthday party happens. And then she gets lost in the forest. They start searching for her, and after a week they give up. And then suddenly the daughter comes back with no explanation what happened. She seems to be a completely different person, and but there are signs that something is wrong, basically. And the whole thing is basically about the family's reaction to the daughter returning and the events that follow after that, and the ways in which the daughter has been changed by her experiences. And really central to the whole story is the titular Primbon, which I did a little bit of research on this, but the movie is actually pretty good about explaining this. But very, very briefly, the Primbon is a Javanese sacred text that's kind of part astrology, part religious text, part numerology, that basically provides kind of like a numerology and advice for how to live life. So everything is assigned numbers, and based on the numbers, things are cursed or blessed, and based on the rules of that book, you can calculate when you should do certain things, when you can go for a walk in the woods, who you should get married to, when you should have major life occasions, things like that. And basically, the whole thing is driven by half of the family believing in the rules of the Primbon and the other half not believing in it, and that guides how they react to what's happening to the daughter. That's the basic setup.
So I guess on that note, Jonathan, take us away. Give us your thoughts. You're on mute, by the way. You're on mute. This is not team school. Right. You're on mute.
Crap. My bad. Oh my guys. But yes. Well, for me, the third and final act saved the movie.
Non-spoiler first, or
yeah, non-spoilers. Don't worry, guys. I'll keep this brief. But yeah, the third and final act definitely saved the film for me. I felt some scenes felt a bit discombobulated and redundant, especially in the middle part in Act 2. But the final act, like I said, the final act is delivered. And I did like the theme about, especially at the end. I believe I can't really give spoilers, but there was a bit of that theme of, not the truth will set you free, but once the truth was discovered, it set Raina free. And I liked how that scene was executed at the end, but we'll get more into that. But like I said, the third act saved the film for me.
So you didn't like the beginning or the middle?
It's not that I didn't like it. You know what? As someone that's, that likes filmmaking, I definitely like the shots in the first scene, especially within the house when they were waiting for when the girl pretty much came back. And obviously when the family was all in the living room. And yeah, I just liked how that scene was shot. It wasn't bad. It just felt a bit too slow. But at the same time, I'm actually kind of contradicting myself. I do think that the discovery of the girl's possession was kind of given to us. I think they should have kind of like played around with it a bit. They should have they should have played around with it a bit. You know what I'm saying? They should have had us thinking, is she actually possessed, or did something happen to her in the woods where it was traumatic and she's just kind of like hiding a secret that's eating her away and changing her personality? Do you know what I'm saying? I think that was kind of given to us, like we're off rip. Is this a spoiler? I don't really think it's a spoiler, but like it's not really a spoiler. But off rip, they just told us she was possessed. Whereas I think
right from the start what's going on, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But the way that she came back and the way that she was acting and behaving, I think they should have kind of played around with it and maybe kind of said, okay, maybe she's not possessed. Maybe there's just, like I said, maybe there was just something that happened to her in the woods, which was really traumatic, and it's changing her character, her persona, just changing everything about her. They should have played around with that a bit more and kind of brought that into the beginning of Act 3, but they kind of just gave it to us straight away that she was possessed, and I think that kind of dragged. Like I said, some scenes felt redundant. That kind of dragged. So that was my only problem with the beginning. It's not that I didn't like it. I just think I was trying to keep myself engaged in the film, and when I'm trying to keep myself engaged in the film, that's when it's not that great. But like I said, Act 3, it saved it for me. That's when I was like, oh, okay, this is looking a bit good. It's looking better. It's looking spicy. So yeah.
I would say I'm actually the opposite. I actually enjoyed the beginning of the movie more so than the actual end. I feel like the end was a bit of a letdown for me. I actually feel like the movie was enjoyable as a whole. And I'm not the type of person that likes horror movie. I think we've gotten into it in some of the previous videos. I don't like horror movies at all. And
As you've
from the
said,
get
every horror movie we've reviewed on this show so far, which is about half.
yeah, exactly. But from the get go, I just felt like a massive unease. Obviously, because I knew what was coming, and again, it was very much spelled out from the beginning that she was possessed. So I just felt like this unease as to sort of know what was to come and what was to be explored and things like that as well. I do feel like it was shot really well. I think it was mentioned that this is like an Indonesian movie, so I wasn't kind of too sure what to expect in that fun. But I feel like the directing of the film was like really good. I enjoyed a lot of something like the acting and stuff like that as well in the movie. I feel like the script. I feel like you've touched on a few of the issues with this script. I feel there could have been some improvements. There could have been, quite a few improvements in the script and how the story was told and how it unfolded throughout the movie as a whole. But generally, like my feeling after watching it was cool. It's not a bad movie. I wouldn't, go raving about it. I wouldn't sort of be recommending it to everyone. But if I know a certain person is a big horror movie fan, I'd say, give it a watch. It's okay. It's cool.
You know what? One thing I will say about the film that it did for me, it kind of got me back into wanting to watch indie films. Like after watching that film, I was like, oh, okay, I kind of appreciate like these original ideas, small budget indie movies. Like literally, as soon as I finished watching the movie, I was like, even though it wasn't great, but it was like how they said, it was cool. I was like, I want to watch more of this. So I do believe if you're like, I don't want to say cinephile, but if you're someone that really likes movies, I think it will make you want to watch more indie films for me personally. But yeah,
I'm not even sure it's that indie. I haven't researched the director, but I think he's done a bunch of horror movies that have been pretty successful in Indonesia, just not very much overseas.
But this felt like a low budget film
by Hollywood standards, but like the production quality I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't bad, but you can tell when something is like a blockbuster film and when something is, indie. So yeah, just personally for me, I just thought it looked indie, which it wasn't bad. Like I said, I do like the looks of a lot of indie movies, but just for me, I didn't think it was it was created by someone that was, like you said, has a catalog of successful movies. Oh yeah, Daniel, what about you? What did you think about the film?
So you'll be shocked to hear me say this, but the trailers are lying to us again. When you watch the trailer, it's sold very much as a ghost story, right? So crazy hauntings, crazy apparitions, just things things flying through the room, and it's not that at all. So if you go in expecting that, you get about 15 minutes of that in an 85-minute movie. And so if that's what you're looking for, then this movie is not it. Then for a while, as I was thinking about it, the next comparison was actually The Exorcist, because not in terms of quality, because very few movies come to reach the genius that is The Exorcist, but in terms of style and tone and concept, this is pretty similar. So in that it's not really about the possession or about the spirits, it's about the family's reaction to a family member being possessed or being a spirit or something being wrong with her. And they have to decide what to do about it, and different people have different reactions to it, and the story is about the reactions to it. And I think I've moved away from that comparison since then a little bit, because it's really like the actual dealing with the spirit is not really a central part of the movie. It's really about this family that has this rift going through them, that has been simmering under the surface for 20 years. This event is kind of bringing that back to the surface, and people can no longer hold back. And when they should be hanging together as a family, that's when they're being torn apart by these divisions. And I thought the movie was really good at setting up that conflict, explaining it to somebody who doesn't, who's not Indonesian, who's not Javanese. I could not have told you which parts of the family were part of the in-group and which weren't, right? The movie has to explain that to us, and it did very effectively. Generally, and once that happens, and once that has been set up, it gets it gets paid off very effectively. And that is basically the movie. And the actual ghost stuff is kind of also there. So I think that's important to keep in mind when you approach that movie, because that's the kind of movie it is. And if you expect, it's kind of similar to Night Swim from a few weeks ago, where people were expecting a haunted pool movie and they didn't get it. And so nobody liked it. This, I think, has the potential to give a similar experience, where if you're expecting crazy hauntings and apparitions and things flying through the air, you're also not going to get very much of that. But if you are in it for a story about tradition versus modernity and families being torn apart by old grievances they thought they had left behind but haven't really, then this is a really good movie. It's also well made, I thought. Pacing is good. It's 85 minutes long. The characters are likable. The scenery is nice. Characters are clearly defined. So it's a really good movie. You just have to come in with the right expectations, I think.
You made a good point about obviously what was given in terms of like, the family grievances and obviously them going through, just trying to resolve their issues and just, them just going through their story while periodically trying to find out the truth of the girl. Like, is the girl possessed? And obviously, where it leads to. So that was a good point. So it sounds like you really like the film. Okay, so it leads into my next question.
I've got problems with it, but those are details for the spoiler section, and I'm sure we'll get into those. But just as a general, like if I could take out the middle 20 minutes with all the ghost stuff, then I would highly recommend that movie to anybody who will listen.
But what would you replace the ghost stuff with, though? By the way, don't you think we're already in the spoiler section? I think we're kind of in the spoiler section.
Honestly, I think that's not necessary. Like, because the whole thing has to do with the rules of the Primbon and how half the family doesn't obey it and half does, right? So Rana should not have gone out into the woods on that day, right? Because her mother's birthday is a cursed day. I think she was born from a relationship that was not approved by tradition, and there's all these factors that mean bad things are going to happen on this day, and on a day like that, you're not supposed to go out in the woods, and she did it anyway, right? And the family being torn apart over who to blame for that, I think would have been enough conflict.
Okay.
And I think, honestly, the ghost stuff is there to sell the movie.
Yeah. That
makes for a good trailer, and horror. I don't know if it's the same in Indonesia, but generally horror sells well. And I imagine this was good marketing. But I think that's kind of like, what's the expression, like sugar and whip or whatever. There's like, this ghost stuff is there to get people interested, and then once they've bought a ticket, they have to sit through the movie about the family. And I think that's the story the author actually wanted to tell. And I think it's really apparent that all the haunting stuff both doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and you could remove it and you would still have a movie that is just as good.
Yeah. They just used the ghost story as a vehicle to introduce, the pretty much the main concept of the film. But yeah, I agree.
And I think it also drags it down because it spends like 20-25 minutes, which is a solid third of the runtime, on something that's not needed. And that's where the movie stops making sense. Like, everything else is really pretty well structured, I thought. Like, exposition is a bit clunky, but I needed that because I needed to be given all that context. I didn't know what the Primbon was. I didn't know the specifics of all those rituals and traditions, and so I had to be told, right? And the movie does that a bit clumsily, maybe, but it does it so effectively and gets it out of the way. But then it spends about a third of its runtime on the ghost stuff that just drags it down because that's where it stops making sense, and you just kind of have to ignore it.
But to be fair, a lot of urban legends don't really make sense. So if you're using that as, the main premise of your film, is like, I understand that it does need to make sense, but there's certain things that don't really need to make sense, if what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah. No, but I don't mean making sense as in terms of being believable, right? It's a ghost, right? But the ghost behaves differently, it looks differently in each scene. Right, like it's not consistent behavior. The ghost is not trying to do a certain thing or acts in a certain way. It felt a lot like just random, like drawing horror cliches out of a hat, like a bunch of scenes like when the sister's going to sleep and she feels the hand of her sister like on her shoulder, and we see that it's the ghost's hand. And then when she looks back, the sister's on the other end of the room in her bed, so clearly she wasn't the one. That behaves completely differently from the scene where the friend is in the library trying to do some research, and then as the light flickers, the apparition comes closer every time the light flickers. I didn't think any of that meant anything or behaved in consistent ways. It's just these are images from other horror movies, so we're gonna put them in there.
The ghost though. Oh, sorry, Javi.
No, I was gonna say just another sort of just to add to that point as well was the whole scene with the doctor when he's coming to see the daughter, and he can see the maggots and stuff coming out of her mouth, but her father's sat right there and he can't see it as well. And again, it's like Daniel said, it seems like it's done just because it's maybe a horror cliche or whatever, as opposed to actually making sense within the movie or the story.
But can I say something? I think with the ghost point, what I got from it and why the ghost wasn't staying consistent, I think the ghost was trying to accustom to its new settings. I think it was trying to it was trying to settle in, if that makes sense. So he was literally trying to fit in, but by nature couldn't because it's evil. Do you know what I'm saying? But I generally think he was trying to settle in and obviously hide its true identity from the family. So there'll be times where, like you said, it wasn't consistent, but there were times where I generally think he was trying to just accustomed to its environment, which personally for me is I thought that was a good touch. You know what I'm saying? Because there were some scenes where they were evil, I think especially one spoiler section now, guys. But when the auntie was doing the girl with Serena's hair, and then the worms were showing, and obviously she was very you saw her sinister side towards the family that was being disrespectful to the mom. But when it comes to her actual family, as in her mom, her dad, her sisters, I could tell that she was the ghost was trying to fit in. So are you talking about, so when you say inconsistencies, are you saying between the two, even though they're one family, but between the two families, or do you mean is there any other point that you're trying to say?
I mean inconsistent as in if you just showed somebody those scenes in isolation, they would have no way of knowing it's from the same movie.
Okay.
It's just the design is different, the style is different, the way the hauntings happen is different. And I think what was frustrating, I actually watched it twice. Which is the only time I've done this in as part of this podcast, and it helped that it was A on Netflix and B relatively short, so I watched it. I made sure to watch it twice, and actually on watching it the second time, it makes a lot more sense. There's a lot of little things set up that you kind of miss on the first time viewing, like the thing about the red flag or the bird outside. There are little things scattered throughout the movie that really set up this thing that there's an evil presence there. Except we already know that, so I'm not entirely sure why it's there, but all the little details of the plot really hang together if when you watch it for a second time, because then you know what to look for. But what I found frustrating is that every time I tried I was told. So I was to caveat this. I was totally on board with not being familiar with the language, the visual language, and the shorthands that the director was using. Right. So I felt kind of like somebody who watches. I think if you show somebody from a non-European country The Exorcist, they will be confused about, why they're suddenly speaking a different language. They don't know the significance of Latin and things like that, right? Things that we are familiar with because we know that context. And I think a lot of this is similar here, where this is probably using a lot of shorthand and imagery from probably traditional mythology from that area that we are just not familiar with. So the way the ghost looks and the way ghost behaves and stuff like that. I imagine we're missing a bunch of little details there. But every time, and even taking that into account, every time I tried to understand what was going on, and I tried to apply an interpretation to what I was seeing, that accounted for maybe half the movie or a third of the movie, and then the rest didn't make sense. And every explanation explains a different chunk of it. But it doesn't seem to really hang together. So for a while I thought, well, the ghost is kind of tainting the memory of each family member, right? The aunt likes to brush her hair, and so she sees maggots on her scalp, right? So that's kind of messing with the connection those two people have. And there's one or two others where that interpretation works, but then there's three others where it doesn't. And it goes on like that. So that's kind of what I found a little bit frustrating, that it doesn't seem like, as you think more about it, it makes more sense. It's just you kind of you're supposed to take each scene kind of in a vacuum and just say, okay, that was creepy, but I've seen it in 20 other horror movies.
True. So the second time that you watched it, did you do research, or did you do research after watching it both times?
So I watched it once and then did a little bit of research on what the Primbon actually was. And that's kind of it. It's very difficult to get actual details. Like, this movie is so obscure, there is no Wikipedia page for it, and there are no English language reviews on YouTube at the time we're recording this. So it is quite difficult to get any kind of detail on what this is all about. But I think the movie gives enough exposition and enough characterization that you can get it just by watching the movie. But I didn't get all of it on the first watch. On the second watch, it all became a lot clearer, and there I was actually kind of impressed with how efficient the movie is, about how each scene kind of builds, either introduces the characters or develops the conflict, or develops the building tension where people can no longer ignore what's going on with Rana. So it's actually a really kind of elegant movie. It's just got this 20-minute bit in the middle with the horror movie cliches, and I think that's why I'm kind of so hung up on that stuff, because I wanted it to make sense, and it just didn't. And the more I tried, the less it makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely see your point of view. What are you?
So I was gonna say, as someone that doesn't watch horror movies, do they normally explain like the evil spirit and what the evil spirit usually wants? Because that's like when something's introduced to me, like the evil spirit and her being possessed or whatever like that, and obviously like her coming in, and obviously they like explain that the evil spirit was kind of drawing in more evil spirits as well towards the house. I was hoping to get an understanding and an explanation as to where the evil spirit kind of came from, because obviously, like Daniel mentioned, like, you know, there's this book of Primbon which says obviously, you know, bad things will happen on this day, and, you know, good things will happen on this day or whatever. But then in my like sort of experience of it, there wasn't really an explanation of like evil spirits and stuff like that, and like sort of what they would potentially want or whatever. And that's stuff that I sort of normally like to seek out in movies when they're introducing things like this. So again, is that normally sort of explained in these type of horror movies? Because I don't normally watch it. And two, did I potentially miss it in the movie? Because obviously, again, Daniel, you watched it twice as well, so maybe you picked up on something that I might have missed.
So I think a good horror movie will at least have the evil act in consistent ways. But a lot of, by really, so I think the good ones do and the bad ones don't, is the answer. And I very much prefer it when there's rules to it, even if the rules aren't stated out loud. When the more you think about it, the more you can kind of find patterns in how this behaves. And like the ghost or the monster, whatever it is, how it behaves. And here it wasn't really explained that much, other than this is attracting evil to the house, and this will bring bad fortune, and we have to cleanse Rana to make this stop.
Yeah.
So it's not. I don't think it's that complicated. It's more that the more I think about it, and each time I've watched it, I became more convinced that there wasn't an explanation. That it's just creepy stuff happening. So we get from the opening scene to the cleansing ritual, and we kind of have to connect the two, and we have to fill, an hour and a half. This actually feels like a short film. Like if you just take those two scenes, put them together, and have that scene where the argument escalates among the family, that's like a 10-minute, really really good 10-minute short film. And then I think that's kind of part of the problem that got then extended into 90 minutes.
Yeah, so I think I agree with what you're saying in terms of like obviously they had that initial idea, the writer had that idea of the story they wanted to tell, but again they had to have like the horror aspect of it, and it seems like it was a bit of an afterthought of the movie. Again, it seems like it was something added on sort of towards the end, or thought of towards the end of the process.
Okay. Well, you both kind of.
Go ahead. I had some thoughts on that, but I've been talking.
Yeah, no, Daniel, go on.
Okay. I actually think the ending, one of my biggest problems with the movie. So I kind of don't like that there's 20 minutes of filler in the middle. But the thing I really have a problem with is what exactly walked into the house in the first scene, right? Where so is that Rana, and she's just, and there are spirits kind of going along with her because she attracted by doing these things, she attracted bad fortune, or is this a ghost impersonating her, or is this her corpse and it's reanimated by an evil spirit? Like, there are different interpretations, and none of them really make sense if you take the last scene into account, or does it?
You're right. You're right. Even though I do feel like the last scene was executed very well, because to me it kind of showed me that, oh, okay. So the cleansing scene, by the way, which was one of my favorite scenes, which we'll get into, it was like the truth, like I said, the truth kind of awoken there. Even though we've seen a lot of that theme being executed in many films, I just think seeing her, like, her, just the way that the different spirits were acting, and she was actually finally waking up once they were cleansing her. I just really like that. But you are right though, because I wasn't too sure if this was actually a spirit, like if this was just one spirit, or that was just her, but like just imitating her, or if this was like different spirits just influencing her. Like, yeah, you're right. I didn't really know what was possessing her. If she was possessed, like what was going on with her possession?
Because the big thing about it is, if this is really Rana, right? If there's a physical Rana who is bringing evil spirits or bad luck into the house, who are they find? Who do they find in the forest in the end? And if she was just a spirit, why did everybody see her? Why did she walk around? Like you know what I mean? Like it's like, or if the physical Rana, or was now that I think about it, maybe that was her spirit, but her body was still in the forest, and they couldn't find her body until the cleansing was done, maybe. But now I'm guessing. I guess that kind of makes sense, but I don't think the movie really explains it. They just say, well, if we do the cleansing ritual, we will find the body. But isn't there already a body walking around in the house? That was the part that I wasn't clear on. And maybe this is part of the mythology. Maybe this is something an Indonesian audience would just know. So if there's anybody watching who knows this, just leave a comment, because I'm curious to find out. I really want this to make sense, but as based on the stuff that's in the movie, I'm not sure it does.
Maybe those spirits that we saw at the end were each spirit was taken over. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because
those were clearly the ghosts of the village, right? This was the old, like the old wounds opening back up again. That was anybody who was ever wronged or died a traumatic death in that village over the last centuries was coming back, right? And she was kind of pulling back the curtain, so to speak, by her just by being there. But what I mean is, they find her body in the forest, right? And they find it because the cleansing ritual was done. But the cleansing ritual was done on her. So are they both Rana, or is one of them Rana, or is one her spirit and one her body? But if that's her spirit, how is it physical? Like, is that spirit supposed to be physical? And that's an open question to me.
On the cleansing scene, interestingly you said that, because I interpreted it as like all the evil spirits that they say were coming to the village. But again, you watched it twice, so like you might have sort of seen it differently, or seen something that I must have missed on that one. But I thought it was just like all the evil spirits that they say were coming to the village were like then sort of I don't know, just being affected by the cleansing ritual that was going on. To be honest,
and those were really cool designs, by the way. Like the ash gray appearance. I thought that those were clearly other spirits, like from other villagers that had died there over the centuries. But then I just remembered the part that
you say that. Sorry, I was gonna say, but then you say that, but then when some of the hauntings were happening, or some of these hauntings were happening to the other family members, so like if you remember when the auntie was sat on the sofa and it was like a big guy or whatever like that was like sort of getting to her or whatever.
I think that was the uncle. They talk about the uncle having died, and also under cursed circumstances.
Okay.
Crap!
Did you pick up on that?
Again, you watched it twice, so I must have missed that.
So what happens is, what seems to have happened is that one of the aunt's husband probably got sick, and the the mother and the father and Rana are very much pro-modern and pro-scientific medicine and all of that, and all the aunts and the grandmother are pro-tradition, right?
Did you say the daughter as well?
Sorry?
Did you say the daughter as well? Just because
Yes.
I don't know.
So
Okay,
the daughter has the views of her mother.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the whole thing. And the uncle who was sick apparently opted to go with the medicine instead of prayer, and then he died from the consequences of the illness. And the aunts are blaming the mother for that because she was a bad influence. And that ties together with the whole, their relationship should never have happened because they're not a good match based on the numerology. And now she's kind of dragged, another member of the family down with her, that sort of thing. And as the tension ratchets up, I think this is easy to miss because they throw just the name out there without really explaining what it is. But I think from context, especially after having seen it twice, I think the uncle sided with the mother. And then went for the scientific medicine. It didn't work. He died anyway, and there has been this seething resentment between the aunts and the mother over that because they blame her for making him decide incorrectly.
Yeah.
And as the tension ramps up over what to do about Rana, they bring that up again, and that is what pushes the mother over the edge in the end, where the fight completely escalates. Mm-hmm. And I think the ghost I think he's choking one of the aunts or grabbing her face or something like that. Yeah. That's the uncle who died. Okay. And then later on, during the purification ritual, when Rana has this vision, and that's another point I want to get to in a minute, but she sees an old woman kind of walking around the house, and I think that's the grandmother who died sometime earlier. Like the father's mother, they mentioned that she died some time ago, and as things got worse after she died or something like that. So two of the ghosts they're showing in the house are relatives, and then outside they show other people who I assume are other villagers.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, cool. That makes sense.
And that brings me to one of the biggest things that doesn't make any sense, and that is if we are saying that Rana, who is being cleansed, is not Rana, but some evil spirit. Who is having the vision during the cleansing ritual, and what does it mean?
That's interesting. I think, what I think it could potentially be? I think Rana's spirit was lost, because you see how the sister and Rana's friend went out in the woods. I think what they were trying to do was they were looking for Rana, not knowing that they were looking for her spirit, and the spirit that was in Rana's body was the one that was kind of like being released, because obviously of the cleansing scene. So it's like, so while they're releasing this spirit, periodically the sister and so while she's being released, the sister and the sister and Rana's friend are trying to find Rana's spirit, which kind of, when they find her spirit, it's really her physical embodiment, which
the explicit
her spirit is like a
body.
Yeah, so it's like they're trying to find the body, but I think it can be interpreted as trying to find her spirit at the same time, because something is possessing Rana. Like, that's already been established.
Yeah.
Like, she's possessed. So it's like, cool. So if she's possessed, who's in her body? Like, there's already something in her body. So where's her spirit? So that's why I thought, okay, the friend and the sister are out looking for Rana. So the only thing that they could potentially be looking for is her spirit, because her body's already been taken by another spirit. So what else is there to look for if Rana is already there? Like, her body's already there.
And I think that is where like our cultural perspective comes in, because by the rules of ghosts that I know, I would expect that to be Rana's body, and she's being possessed, but her soul is trapped somewhere else, and her body is being possessed by evil spirits, and the evil spirits have to be driven out. Like, if this was a European story, that's how that would go. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure it's the same way here. Now that I think about it more, her body might be in the forest, her spirit came home, but because it's a spirit, it brought like evil spirits along with it. And the longer it stays in the house, the more the spirits can come in and cause chaos. Maybe that's the interpretation. Mm. But then, like, the movie doesn't seem to make a distinction. Like, it doesn't seem to show the difference between the body and the spirit. Like, they just treat her spirit as her, and nobody seems to know the difference. She doesn't do anything impossible. It's not like she's always off in the corner or can't go. Like, she even goes outside, right? And other the rest of the village interacts with her and sees her at the market. So I think that's the part that confused me, because.
But that kind of falls into my point. I think the spirit was trying to blend in.
But can it?
Well, that's the thing. Clearly, we see throughout that it can't, because people are kind of like, discovering this ain't Rana. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like I said, by nature, it can't blend in. But I generally do believe that the spirit was trying to blend in.
And you think it was just like going after the people that were kind of obviously doubting that she was? Because obviously her mother said that they had an argument with the woman that was selling the fish, the rice and the fish and stuff like that in the market. So she then went to the market to then go and confront them, or at least have like a confrontation with them.
I think it manifested into that. Like I said, so technically the spirit is now like, it's like a baby. I'm saying it's in a world that's, that's new to it. So it's like, okay, let me try. Like I said, let me try and accustom to my situation, let me accustom to what's going on and what it's seen is going on. It's got a love. You see how the spirit wasn't really going at the mom. Do you know what I'm saying? Because the mom was the one that was showing the spirit the most love. So, but the spirit was but the spirit, like the people that was giving it bad energy, that's when it was reciprocating it. But the people that were, there for him or her, we don't know if it's a him or she, could have even been a she, we don't know. But I'm saying, like, that's when the spirit was, that's when the spirit was, basically the spirit was just reciprocating energy, literally.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, like, my opinion on that is that I feel like, because we're having all of these questions, and because there's a debate whether it was a spirit or if it was actual body, or what she actually was and stuff like that, and what the spirit wanted. I feel like, again, you kind of have to have some type of antagonist to work like that in the movie, and I feel like everything you're saying sort of makes sense. And again, if it was an idea that was fully fleshed out, would be would work for a really good movie. But I just feel like that the way that they writ it, to me, it just seems like these are the people that were against the bad spirit. Okay, we need some horror, we need some haunting, and we're just going to make the we're going to make Rana go and attack these people. Is how I'm I understand what you're saying in terms of the spirit and wanting to fit in and stuff like that. But to me, it just seems like the horror aspect of it was just an afterthought, and it needed someone to haunt, and it was these people that were trying to cast away the evil spirit.
I see where you're coming from, but that's not what happened though. That's not how I see it. Because something that I actually liked, right, was how they didn't go OD with Rana's possession. Because generally when we see in ghost story films, straight away when someone's possessed, they go on a killing spree. But with Rana, it was like they kind of utilized on the execution of subtle build-up when it comes to the revelation of her state. And the way that they were doing it was, like I said, was certain scenes. She wasn't killing everyone. So how she was doing it was just by acting strange in certain situations. For example, when the sister was looking for Rana when she was in the shower, and then her sister looked down, and then out of nowhere, Rana just literally just just showed herself. Other ghost story movies, that situation there, the sister, that person would have died. You know what I'm saying? Or they were just, I think they were very it was very subtle the way that they were, because they already gave it to us that she was possessed. So that's how I was thinking to myself, okay, they're already giving it to us that she's possessed. Now what is she gonna? Now how is she gonna act with this possession? And the possession was very it was intimidating, but it wasn't. It wasn't a killer, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
she wasn't threatening anybody. She was just wrong.
Yeah, literally.
But then the problem is it doesn't hint or explain what the possession actually wants, because obviously she's possessed and she's maybe going after all the people that are trying to cast her out, but what's the ultimate goal of the thing? Is it just to stay here permanently and then to fit in? I don't know, it's just it just doesn't make sense to me.
That's a good question. I think that's just based on our own interpretation. My interpretation of it was the spirit is just trying to blend in. The spirit's just trying to blend in and not get caught, but at the same time, because of its nature, it's bound to get caught. You know what I'm saying? It's evil. So
Spirit might just go home, but she then drags the evil spirit. She might not be evil herself, but she just wants to go home and live her life. But because of what's happened to her, she brings the bad spirits with her. That's kind of my interpretation.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's the part where it probably could have been clearer, or could have been more consistent. Because my big question was, when I watched the cleansing scene, who exactly was having the vision and what did it mean, right? Why did she see her house? Why did she see blood boil out of the sink? Why did she? What was the entity coming out of the well? That all looks really creepy, but I don't know that it meant anything, and I don't know that it told me anything about Rana's state of mind, or was a conclusion to her journey, or anything like that, right? That was, to me, the part that was just, let's put some creepy imagery together so we can put it in the trailer.
But wasn't that scene because as soon as, like I said, I think Rana was entrapped, but then as soon as she started to wake up, that's when the spirit disappeared. So how I saw it was, okay, so yeah, literally. So I keep saying, I think whatever they were looking for, it was literally Rana's spirit. So as soon as Rana woke up, that's when because she was asleep. I believe she was asleep the whole time. As soon as doing the cleansing scene, that was what was waking up Rana. And then once she started, so when she discovered that she's in some sort of realm where there's other spirits, and when she finally wakes up, that's when the spirit disappears. So that's what I thought. So it was like she was set free. The cleansing set her free, which led to the bad spirit disappearing and her finally dying, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which I get. It doesn't really. I do understand. I do get what you guys are coming from, because it feels very convoluted. Like it doesn't really make sense. You have to make it sense. You have to make sense of it, which at times can be good, but this one, just like I said, feels a bit convoluted. So it's like we're trying to force an interpretation that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to solve this, but I think we can all agree that if this part made sense, it would have made the movie much better. I think that part is dragging it down a little bit, right?
Yeah, because the other aspects of the movie are great, in my opinion. Like in terms of like family dynamics, the family conflicts. I mean, especially the father. I feel like, he was like put in like a very interesting position, because obviously he's got like his sisters and stuff like that really believe in the Primbon, and then he's got his wife that is on the complete opposite end of the scale, and he's having to try to like manage both of those relationships whilst also having that grief for his daughter, or like having the initial relief of having his daughter back as well, and like trying to just be happy for that, and like try to continue a normal life from that point onwards. So I feel like every other aspect of the movie was really good. It's just the whole part of it just like that, so it brings it down a little bit.
And you can really buy that he's been keeping the peace for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. That you can imagine, like, the first year or two after he got married, against everybody's advice, and I'm sure he got a lot of flack for that. And then eventually that died down, and he thought people had gotten over it. But no, they're just one crisis away from bringing all of that back up. Which is how a lot of families operate, right? You think there's something like a certain topic is done, or is an old issue, and then at the first opportunity comes back up again.
Well, I'm still going to stand by what I say. I still think the final act for me was my favorite part. But what I will say is, during this discussion, you guys have helped me spot the nuances. Whereas, okay, this doesn't really make sense. And, you definitely generally do have to fish out your own interpretations to make it make sense. So I do agree to an extent. But just personally for me, I felt more engaged into the final act rather than the first two. But hey, man, it is what it is.
The beginning was really strong, like really well paced, really well. It even just Rana's everything up and into, including Rana's appearance, is bottom.
I did too, by the way.
In terms of how it's paced and how it dispenses information exposition, really, really strong. And then the middle is kind of filler, and then the end hinges on something that doesn't seem to make much sense.
I agree too, by the way. I think the beginning was good. I think I should have said it was the middle part mainly. I do agree. I think it was the middle part that, like, for me, felt a bit, just some redundancies. But definitely the beginning, I definitely liked how it started. They kind of got straight into it. You know what I'm saying? They kind of got straight into it. But,
and I really like that they didn't spend half an hour on mundane day-to-day stuff. They could have done that. Like a standard template for horror movies is the first half hour is just mundane family life, and then something happens, and this started right from the first second there was plot happening, and I really enjoyed that. And I think they had 2 flashbacks where they showed how Rana got permission to go to the forest on the cursed day. I thought that I normally don't like flashbacks very much. I think they're way overused, and they tend to really drag down a movie's pacing. And the fact that 2 flashbacks saved us half an hour of not much happening, I think was totally worth it, and that was a good decision.
Guys. Well,
I was gonna say, I feel like the flashback as well helps the father's character as well in terms of understanding his grief, in terms of obviously he probably on the advice of his sisters, or having that knowledge of the Primbon and stuff like that, would have advised against it. But then that bond with his daughter and wanting to have her help out in the market, which is probably super important to him, and then something eventually happening would have a massive toll on how he deals with the grief of losing his daughter, and then him being very accepting of her actually being back, even though she is possessed, and him trying to continue as normal essentially. So yeah, that was a good flashback.
What do you guys think about the message of the movie, that it really was the mother's fault? Because that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah. Are you asking, do we agree with it, or are you saying, did we like it?
But what was your experience when it became clear that the movie was going there? Because if this was like an American horror movie, the exact opposite would have happened, right? Normally, the tradition is either incorrect or stifling, or transcending tradition is in a Western horror movie. That's what the good guys do, right? And the bad guys, or at least antagonists, are the people who are trying to impose traditions on people that don't benefit anybody and that just keep people in a certain place. And here, the rules of the Primbon actually do work always, and they are always correct. And breaking them or ignoring them is what causes trouble. So the movie is very much saying, don't ignore tradition, because you will be worse off for it.
Well, in terms of that message, I do believe they executed it quite well, because they were following, they executed it quite well, because I do think the mum took most of the burden, and the way that she was acting, unbeknownst to how her daughter was acting, it was like, okay, I think she knows, but because in the back of her mind, obviously people keep telling her, it's kind of your fault, that her husband's family keep on telling it's her fault. So I think it was executed quite well. Now, in terms of, do I personally agree with it? No, but I don't know if this is like countries which are not Western, right? I don't know how to explain it, but this is really prevalent in African countries, Asian countries, where there's a lot of beef. Families have a lot of beef with their sons' wives. I don't know why, but they have a lot of beef with their sons' wives. So I could resonate with that, because I used to watch a lot of Nollywood back in the day. Daniel, this is it's Nigerian African movies, right?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Cool, yeah. So a lot of the times the family was beefing the wife. The wife was the blame for everything. So I resonated with her, and I understood why she was acting oblivious to what the hell was going on with her daughter. So I don't agree with that stance of her being, her being the fault of what's going on. But I do think she started to believe it, and she was trying to rectify it. Well, she was trying to ignore it, but then it got to the point where she finally broke down, and the cleanse, especially the scene when she clashed with the actual system, then she ended up stopping her. That was her breaking point. And I think when she kind of accepted defeat was when she accepted the cleansing. That's why she was so against it. Because I think if she accepted it straight away, then that's her accepting what the family is saying, how it's her fault. But it was trying to fight against that, as well as fighting against the fact that her daughter might actually possess.
I mean, it's said in several places that she never assimilated, right? She's not Javanese, and she married into this Javanese family, and she's kind of been polite about it, but she has refused to adopt all these traditions, right? And that has been a source of conflict with the aunts, right? And I think the movie very clearly communicates that all of the rules of the of the Primbon and all those traditions are in fact correct, and none of this would have happened if she had done what she was supposed to do. The ending scene where Rana does her video log, like talking about how, I know this is a cursed day, but we don't really believe in that stuff anymore, and who cares? And that's her, those were her last words, right? So I think the movie is very clear, like beyond any shadow of a doubt, that she died because she ignored the traditions, and she ignored the traditions because she was raised that way by her parents.
That's actually a very good point. Damn. So do you think that this film has a deeper message that it was trying to send out? As in, obviously, the message being, if you go against traditions, then it'll kind of be like your downfall. Do you genuinely think that? Do you think that the director that's the message that he was trying to put out, and that's the message that we should follow?
I think that's exactly what the movie says, and I don't think it's very subtle about it, because is there an example of the Primbon being wrong?
No,
I don't think so, right?
So there was one part where Raina's friend was talking about how there's a 10% chance that we'll end up finding Raina. So maybe that was the director's way.
That was just statistically, after a week of being lost in the forest, that's a 90% chance that person is dead. That's what he was talking about. That wasn't about the Primbon.
But I thought, couldn't we interpret that as them saying there's a 90% chance that if you follow tradition, like it's a 10% chance that if you go against tradition, then it will go well for you, but 90% chance most of the times it won't go well for you.
Well, what that was saying was, well, she's been missing for a week. There's a 10% chance she's still alive, just based on statistics. That's what that was.
Okay. So, okay, cool. I think we've actually, this has been a very interesting comment.
So this is actually, I started off comparing this to Night Swim, then I compared it to The Exorcist. Now I'm comparing it to Starship Troopers.
Wait, what Troopers?
Have any of you read Starship Troopers? Ignore the movie. That movie's an abomination. Don't worry about it. Have you read the book?
No.
So Starship Troopers is basically one of the clearest articulations of conservative morality, specifically strict parent morality. So it basically imagines a utopia where everybody got their act together by observing that way of thinking, right? And that's how this better future was built. And when you read that book, it very clearly articulates that way of thinking and shows why it's correct and why it leads to happy lives and a functioning society and removes social ills and all of that. So even if that's not your politics, if that's not your outlook on life, reading that book will get you to understand it. And this movie is kind of the same way for traditionalism, right? This is what the world looks like for somebody who has a traditionalist viewpoint, which I don't. I don't think any of us have to that much, but I think this is like a window into how the world looks like for people who think that way. But and articulated it because in a way where if you follow these rules and these principles, then you will have a good life and you avoid bad fortune and you will avoid disaster. And if you ignore them, then you invite disaster and you will hurt yourself and others.
That's a very good observation, Daniel. See, guys, this is why you should be here at Eye of the Storm. Deep discussions, mate, in depth. God damn, that was actually really good, Daniel. I actually didn't now that you said, I did not pick that up. That is crazy.
You know what, Daniel? This whole podcast, you've actually made me see the movie in a complete different light. And I think the main reason for that is that I was so creeped out throughout the whole movie and waiting to be scared away that. So I probably missed a few things, but I think you've helped contextualize so much of the movie, which has been actually it's given me a different lens, and it's actually made me appreciate the movie more so after this discussion, to be honest.
Well, I guess my work here is done, but that's what I kind of meant by you can take out the ghost stuff and the movie still works.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said that in the beginning, and that's what I meant by it, right? You can just have the conflict between those two worldviews within one family and the loss of the daughter. You can even have it to be ambiguous, right? Where there's still a chance she's still alive, but realistically, she's probably died at this point from exposure and whatever else, or animal attack, whatever. But just the uncertainty brings out the conflict in the family, the things that they have kind of kept swept under a rug for 20 years. and now because they are under this stressful situation, it's coming back to the surface, and that's what tears the family apart. When really what you want family to do is stick together in a crisis. I think that's a really strong story, and that really works really well. And I think I think somebody should do like a fan edit of that movie, just take out all the ghost stuff, and I think it would be a better movie, and a really good one too. Like, I'm not damning with fan praise. I think it would be a really strong, and even the way it is now is a really enjoyable, well-made movie that has some parts in it that distract a little bit. But if you cut those out, then it becomes an even better movie.
And it kind of does fall into the point that I made before. Like, I do understand, like, the ghost theme is the driving force of the film, but they still could have done that without actually including ghosts. Like I said, they could have built around the sisters. Like, the sister could have come back the same, being alive, but they could have built a mystery around that, making it, they could have presented it in a way is she actually possessed or not? You know what I'm saying? Maybe, like I said, maybe something just traumatic happened into the forest, which we unravel as well as unraveling the pains and just the conflicts within the family, and that could have gone hand in hand. And at the end, it could have been, okay, some crazy stuff happened to the daughter, but she's not actually possessed. And I've seen some, we've seen ghost movies where that is the mystery, like, is someone possessed, and they end up not being possessed. So yeah,
like, is it trauma or is it possession?
Exactly.
Right, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, and that makes go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think as well, like, what this movie shows is that, like we said, I think everyone's enjoyed this movie somewhat. And again, we said that the whole stuff's kind of detracted from it, but this shows, in terms of like good writing and good storytelling, these are like the key fundamentals. Is that you have to have like a good idea, you have to have good premise, you have to have like good characters and things like that. And it doesn't necessarily take too much. You just have to have like an idea or a theme that you want to tell, and then you can add all the other like jazzy stuff to it, and then you get a good movie. Which is why I was like very harsh on The Beekeeper that we did last week, because it was just a very pointless movie, throughout the whole thing, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we just spent the last half hour talking about how much it doesn't make sense. But honestly, this is the best movie in a month. Like, this is a really nice palate cleanser after The Beekeeper and Night Swim and Rebel Moon. Like, this is a proper story, and it feels a bit like a first or second draft when it could have needed another one or two overhauls. Somebody should have pointed out, hey, that haunting stuff kind of tagged on, isn't it? Right? But the story itself is really solid, well acted, well written, well paced. It's just a solid movie.
Well, I don't even know if I need to ask about last thoughts. Maybe I should just go straight to ratings, because I think we've kind of given our last thoughts. In case does anyone want to give last thoughts, or are you just going to go straight to the ratings?
I think we've said our piece.
Yeah, cool. So what would you rate the film?
I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I feel like it's a good watch. It's worth viewing.
Give it 3 out of 5 as is, 4.5 out of 5 for the fan edit that takes out the ghost bits.
Well, before Daniel's observation, I would have given it a 6 out of 10. After Daniel's observation, I give it a 6.5 out of 10. No, man, 6 is really good, especially 6.5. That is really good. I just need to take into account, I didn't enjoy the, Act 2. I felt, like I said, I had to feel I already said
that. A third of the movie is kind of tagged on. That's a problem.
All right, well, guys, before we go, what are we watching next week or this week? What are we watching this week?
We're watching The Kitchen. I actually haven't read too much about it, and I've actually been trying to avoid trailers and stuff like that, so I won't know too much of the synopsis. I just know that it's Daniel Kaluuya's directorial debut. And if you don't know Daniel Kaluuya, he's a phenomenal actor. He's been in some movies like Black Panther. He was Fred Hampton in The Black Messiah, which is another great movie as well. And I'm very interested. You're starting to get a lot of these actors, especially actors of color, like Michael B. Jordan, stuff like that are like starting to make that step behind the camera. So it's just interesting. We're just interested to see what he delivers, what he can do in his first movie. I believe it's like a dystopian kind of like
dystopian London.
Yeah, dystopian London. So you might get some of the stuff that you normally get in a lot of like urban sort of kind of like black movies where you got like the street gang culture and stuff like that. I don't know. Again, I've not seen the trailer, but that's kind of like some of the stuff that I can imagine that I'm expecting from it. But it's just gonna be interesting. I'm interested to see how he does. I'm not gonna be super critical on his first movie. I just wanna see if he has potential.
I'm gonna take that into consideration. So I didn't know that was his first movie. Cool. All right. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week, and yeah, au revoir.
Bye bye.
Ciao.